The 20-year anniversary of the Iraq War should serve as a reminder of the catastrophic consequences of expansionist foreign policy. It should be a reminder of how a megalomaniac prime minister and a servile press allowed a faraway country to be blown apart. However, unfortunately, our press is still servile, and so the occasion of the anniversary has been marked rather differently.
I still don't believe that anyone has ever been able to cite an international law. I don't think you're right. I don't think the UN Charter counts as that. No one's ever been able to cite a law that Tony Blair has broken, because if he had, he would have been indicted. Or if there was a suspicion that he had, he would have been indicted probably by the ICC, the International Criminal Court, who've just indicted Vladimir Putin. But then, of course, George W. Bush couldn't have been indicted under that because the United States isn't a member of the ICC, but the United Kingdom is.
That was Ian Dale, one of LBC's star presenters, claiming that Tony Blair can't have committed war crimes because if he had, he would have already been indicted. Now, he says this argument wouldn't apply to George Bush, as the United States isn't a party to the International Criminal Court, but it's valid for Tony Blair because the UK are. So if we had committed war crimes, if Tony Blair had committed war crimes, the ICC would have indicted him. They didn't. Therefore, he did not commit war crimes. Now, on the surface, that might sound plausible. The problem is, if you do even the most basic of research, you'll know it's bullshit. Now, the first problem with Ian Dale's comment is that he says the UN Charter does not serve as international law. Now, that's not true, as was made clear by Kofi Annan, who was the UN General Secretary when the war was launched. This is a transcript from an interview with the BBC in 2004. So the BBC said, "So you don't think there was legal authority for the war?" Kofi Annan says, "I have stated clearly that it was not in conformity with the Security Council with the UN Charter." The BBC say, "It was illegal." And Annan says, "Yes, if you wish." The BBC repeats, "It was illegal. Yes, I have indicated it is not in conformity with the UN Charter from our point of view, and from the Charter point of view, it was illegal." Right? So the UN Charter is, really the principal foundation of international law as it is today. Whether or not there's a body that can successfully enforce it is a different question, Right, next, Dale said that no one can state what war crime Blair is supposed to have committed. Again, that's false. Saying it's false is ridiculous. It's not just false. This is the relevant clause in the UN Charter, signed by the US and their coalition partners in Iraq, so including the UK. So it's Article 2.4. All members shall refrain in their international relations from the threat of use of force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, or in any other manner inconsistent with the purposes of the United Nations. Now, the practical import of this clause is that no country can launch a war with another unless they are acting in self-defense, or the war has the approval of the UN Security Council. Now, neither was the case before the US and the UK invaded Iraq, which means, therefore, that the US, UK, and other coalition countries launched a war of aggression. This is not a small international crime. This is a big one, right? This is what the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, so everyone seems to say this is legitimate. I certainly think it was pretty legitimate, that International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. This is what they found. This is what they say about wars of aggression. Essentially, an evil thing to initiate a war of aggression is not only an international crime, it is the supreme international crime, differing only from other war crimes in that it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. It contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. Really important point. This was obviously after Nuremberg, so there's countless war crimes committed by the Nazis, but they're saying it's to start a war of aggression, which is the supreme war crime, because it's only once you start a war of aggression, that all the other war crimes follow, right? War crimes are committed during war. So if you start a war of aggression, then that to some degree has precedence. Let's get on to Ian Dale's final point. He says that if Tony Blair had committed any war crime, he would have been indicted by the International Criminal Court. The problem with that, the ICC only got the power to try leaders for the crime of aggression in 2018. And even then, Britain wouldn't fall within its jurisdiction. This is a Guardian article from 2018. So you can see the headline here, ICC crimes of aggression comes into effect without key signatories. So it comes into effect in 2018, long after the war. Subtitle here, important, UK lobbied for delay in law under which leaders could be prosecuted for going to war. I wonder why they did that. Now let's go to the article. A crime of aggression under which politicians and military leaders can be held individually responsible for invasions and other major attacks comes into force at the International Criminal Court, reviving global legal powers last exercised at the Nuremberg and Tokyo war crimes trials of the 1940s. Claims alleging that armed force has been used against the sovereignty, territorial integrity, or political independence of another state can from Tuesday be taken to the tribunal in The Hague. The new offence cannot, however, be enforced retrospectively over conflicts such as the 2003 Iraq invasion. There has been international pressure to give the ICC greater powers to pursue those deemed responsible for initiating conflicts. Britain didn't sign up for this, by the way. Pretty significant. So, in response to Ian Dale, yes, a war crime was committed because the UN Charter serves as international law. Yes, we can name what that war crime was. It was the crime of aggression, which the Nuremberg trial says is the supreme war crime. And no, the fact that the ICC didn't indict Tony Blair doesn't mean he didn't commit the war of aggression, because when that war crime was committed, they didn't have the power to do so. And even now, they don't have the power to do so because Britain hasn't signed up to the relevant amendment to the Charter which founded the ICC. So you can't say, oh, there's nobody with the power to indict me, so therefore I can't have committed a crime. That's not how these things work. That's not how international law works. And, I'm not an expert on this. Ian Dale, I recommend you read Wikipedia. Been very informative to this segment. It's not particularly difficult. I didn't have to call up any international lawyers to work out what you were saying was bullshit. So maybe wikipedia.org, type in international law, and next time you can say something a little bit more insightful on your show, which broadcasts out to hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sure.